Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jeremiyah Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, May 27th. Today, EA Sports 26 released the cover of the new game, so that's very exciting. People are fired up about that, so we're going to talk about that. The SEC and the other conferences are meeting, I believe, this week to discuss possible changes to the playoff format in 2026. So after this upcoming season, and we'll talk about, what that format or what the SEC wants that format to be, how Notre Dame fits into that. Kind of why can't they just, like me and Jamie are saying, just seed or rank the top 16 and those teams make the playoffs. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the straight seeding situation for the upcoming playoff season in 2025, where one through 4 get the buys, no matter conference champion or whatever it is. So Notre Dame can now earn a bye if they're a top 4 team. So there's going to be a straight seeding situation in college football in 2025. And then other topics that may come up in chat, we'll discuss those as well. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you heard, or if you like what you hear, like what you have heard on previous shows, please hit that like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so you know whatever it is. We are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, the show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ and all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2025. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt, or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. Coach Humph says, happy belated Victoria Day to our Canadian friend Jamie. So we appreciate those comments, Coach Humph. Irish One says, love Tuesday's Hit and Hustle. Appreciate you, Irish One, for that. Brian Chesenek with the super chat. Thank you very much for that, Brian. Living in the Raleigh area, a lot of my friends are ACC and SEC fans of various schools. Big complaint is perceived lack of competition on schedule. I argue Pete is more aggressive than Jack. Example in 2029. So talking about Pete and Buck. I feel like Jack Swardbrook was fairly aggressive with scheduling, right? Like he got a lot of the big time matchups on our favorite ones. Like he got Georgia, he got the Ohio State series, Texas A&M. Yeah. Like that's fairly aggressive. So I think Pete Vivacqua, if anything, is just going to continue that kind of trend that Notre Dame's been on of scheduling big time non-conference opponents, or not non-conference, but like those big home and homes against Alabama and teams like that. What do you also he's talking about, signing Clemson to 12 years. I think that's because it looks like USC is trying to get out of theirs. And so Notre Dame wants to lock in something that's going to be recurring year over year. Any comments on that, Jamie, from Brian before we get started?
Those are just idiots who don't really follow, don't really, get scheduling and how it works. First of all, give me a break with the ACC people complaining about it, because to
be clear, Brian, we're talking about the people complaining about
it. Yes, not you, Brian. I'm talking about these people in the Raleigh area who are complaining about Notre Dame's easy schedule. It's like talking about the ACC. It's like you're the problem. You're the problem, the ACC. Like
NC State, come on.
Yeah, like all these. Well, these teams are. The ACC is not good enough, right? So it's like they only get. It only becomes tougher when they play. When they play the top teams in the ACC, and it's just how it works out that they don't play year over year. So guess what? They're guaranteeing now that they are going to play the team that has won the ACC 80% of the time over the last 15 years, right? So that they're always going to have that on the schedule, and you could even just, I would always bring up to them Miami backed out of the game last year. That was the thing. That would have been, a top 15 opponent. They're supposed to come to Notre Dame. They backed out of the game, right? So that's something that Notre Dame had no control over that.
Right.
So that, there's nothing they can do about it. And the other thing, and this is the one thing that I think, which is just flipped with, uh, during this time, is USC just hasn't been good. So they haven't been good like most years. Like, so if you look at like the last decade, what were they good?
They were good. They were good in 17 and they were good in 22.
2016, 2017, 2022. That's it.
Yeah.
So that's one that you kind of count on to be pretty good. Like, they should at least be. There's no excuse that they're not a top 25 team,
right? Like, how are they not? How are they not anywhere between 15 and 20 every single season, if not higher? Right? Like, you expect at some point for them to be like in 2022. That would be, but like what Notre Dame has been over that entire span, right? That over the entire span that USC has been poor, and you can even go back further. Like 15, they weren't very good. 14, that they killed Notre Dame, but that was more about Notre Dame falling apart. 13, they weren't very good. 12, they weren't very good. 11, they were, I think, pretty good. I'm trying to remember. 11, I think they were a pretty good team. 10, they weren't. Right, we're talking like 2009, and previous to that was the last time that they were perennially like they're going to be a top program. Since then, it's been mostly just like mid, 8-4, 7-5 type stuff.
Yeah, and if you go back to 2015, so 2015 to 2024, 10 years for Notre Dame, they won 10 or more games 8 of those years. One other, they won 9. They were stinky in 2016, everybody knows. That's it. One time. So they've always been a quality opponent, no matter what. And obviously they've made the playoff 3 times out of that stretch too. So and probably, and if it was in the current format, they would have made it probably 3 or 4 other times. Yeah. So, so that's something that's happened where that has hurt their strength of schedule, and Stanford just dropped off a cliff.
Yeah,
because Stanford, if you looked at it every year, you know how many of these teams from around the country would have wanted to play Stanford from 2011 to 2018. Or 2017, nobody would have wanted to play them because they played a different style of game. They were always top 15, always, right? And a lot of years I think they won 10 games almost every year except for maybe 1 out of all those years. Put a ton of guys in the league, and then they just dropped. It wasn't even like they went to be okay, well now they're taking a step back, whatever. No, they dropped off the cliff to being one of the worst teams in the power conferences. Mm-hmm. So that's hurt the scheduling. And so I think that's part of it, but I think they've been pretty aggressive with what they've done to try to get, better scheduling. Even if you think of say this year, it's just 1 home game, but Boise State is the team that they added there. That could have been a way worse. They could have picked the worst team in the MAC, or another team. They could have done, say, hey, we're going to do another. Well, but people say that about Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois, by the way, guys, Northern Illinois was decent. They were decent, and also their defense. Go look at the metrics; they were legitimately good.
No, for sure. It's just funny. It's just funny because I'm thinking, well, recent history, that's a tough opponent. Any MAC team, doesn't matter who it is, tough opponent for Notre Dame.
But just on paper, people would say, well, they beat Toledo. It's well, you beat Boise State. Boise State's good, every year. And they end up scheduling Cincinnati in 2021. They're the only team they lost to in the regular season, and they made the playoff that year. They went undefeated. So I don't know. And obviously too, there's just a lot of things that happen with the scheduling, where it went down. Because if you think about when they made the Wisconsin series, well, that was Paul Christ when they were going to the Rose Bowl, one every 3 years and winning 10 games every year. Well, now they're not doing that right now. So maybe Fickle kind of gets them going in the right direction now that he's finally hey, we got to go back to running the ball again and being physical. But that game on paper, if it was like the previous Wisconsin, if you look at like this Lambeau Field game, that would be like a premier matchup. That'd be like, wow, okay. But now it doesn't have the same, kind of thing. Maybe that'll change within the next year. So I don't really know what they're supposed to do in terms of scheduling. Those are just the people that complain, like, oh, join a conference. It's like, well, they could join the ACC and have an easier schedule every year.
I think that we need to kind of get our minds wrapped around like some of these schools, just like aren't that special, like Miami gets all this credit for beating Florida, right? And even Notre Dame, like they get a bunch of credit for beating Texas A&M at Texas A&M, which is like a good win. It is like they're a good football team, but there are like so many good football teams out there. And none like that are great, like the difference between like beating Texas A&M and beating Louisville, like what is it really? One is in the ACC, and so they get a bunch of credit, and one is in the SEC, or they get no credit. One is in the SEC, and they get a ton of credit. Why? Because the SEC has popped up. Like they're both kind of the same caliber of victories. Like they get no credit for beating a team like Army or Navy, but like they're difficult. Like they're difficult in their own kind of way. Right? Like it's just, they are all kind of lumped together to me. Like no one, in my opinion, anymore plays like this super hard schedule. Like look at Penn State. Like what do? They play 2 hard games a year, and they lost one of them last year. They lost one of them, and then they lost again, and then it didn't hurt them at all. Like who cares? Like I don't. I think we need to get like the days of like 1989 Notre Dame having like 9-10 ranked opponents and they're all like just happen at the same time are like really good, like top 20. Like that doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't, and you have all these metrics. It's like, yeah, SP plus says this, that, and the other thing, but like that's just plugging in numbers and it's factoring in like recruiting rankings into their preseason formula, which means these teams are all bumped up higher. Like I just, how I feel about recruiting rankings. I think they're kind of a sham. And so it just like, I don't think there's like, there are so many like, oh, this team is playing this crazy good schedule and this other team, because they're playing Texas A&M away or LSU. Like LSU lost to USC, who went 6-6, and they couldn't get it done in the fourth quarter when Minnesota and Maryland could against them. Like it sounds great, like like LSU and Florida and all those teams. Like it sounds great. They're no great shakes. Like it just, I don't think there's enough separation anymore for anyone to make any kind of scheduling argument, like for real.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say too is like sometimes you can't plan, obviously, way in advance, because honestly, like when the Alabama series gets made, Nick Saban's the coach. He's probably not going to be the coach when that happens.
Yeah,
obviously, the Kalen DeBoer, they're probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah,
but they might take a step back, and that game doesn't. It might not be like top 5 Alabama that you're playing when you're playing those games, right? Just because of that, like, doesn't mean that those aren't tough games or it's not tough to play at Alabama. Or I don't even care how good Arkansas is this year. I mean, they weren't really good last year. And guess what? They beat Tennessee at home. Tennessee made the playoff.
It's difficult to go on the road.
It's difficult to go on the road.
In college football, period.
Yeah. And meanwhile, you got some of these other teams that just like don't want anything to do with like scheduling some of these other. How many other teams want to play a road game at an SEC stadium? Like,
right.
These guys don't want to do it. Nobody wants to do it.
Right. What do they always do when like Georgia or Alabama, they were playing like these kind of crossover games? It was always in a neutral site. They don't play home and homes. It's always neutral. It's never in someone else's stadium.
That was the Nick Saban trick for years. Yeah. We always did that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Georgia and Clemson last year, neutral site. They didn't play at someone's home field, And so to me, that's a little bit Like it's just different. Brian Chesenak, thank you for another super chat. The join a conference, people are like actually delusional. To worry about something that hasn't happened outside of pandemic to me is kind of insane. It's for, I mean, 100%. The join a conference thing is literally just, I'm jealous that you continue to get to do the things that you want to do. That's all. It's just pure jealousy. Why does Notre Dame have to join a conference? My question is like, do you enjoy your conference? Do you enjoy the conference experience? Why don't you leave? If Notre Dame has it so great, that why don't you do what Notre Dame is doing?
Yeah.
There's no rule that says you have to be in a conference.
No.
Just leave the conference. Just do your own thing.
Like it's there. And guess what? There are teams that could do it. If Alabama and Georgia wanted to leave the SEC, I mean, obviously they have to pay whatever the things to do it. But if they wanted to and thrive as a football program, they could. They easily could.
USC could have done this. They could have left the Pac-12 and not gone to the Big Ten and gone independent themselves.
Well, I mean, this is so like whatever. There's nothing going on right now, guys. So we're talking all hypotheticals.
Right.
So, but just imagine that Alabama left the SEC, and then you're like, oh, well, what about the other sports? They say to the ACC, guess what? We'll do the same thing. Give us the same deal as Notre Dame. We'll play 5 games against your conference each year. Yeah. All of our teams move over to the ACC, and we're going to play, and then we get to schedule these other games and have more control over this stuff, and then we can sign like an independent deal. I mean, they probably won't do it. They got it pretty good in the SEC, whatever, and all that's in their tradition and all that kind of stuff. But they could do that. Ohio State could do that. Georgia could do that. I mean, there's like maybe like 5 teams that could do that. USC is not one of them. Couldn't even dream of it. But that's just one of those things. It's just like, if others could do it, they would do it. And it's just jealousy that of Notre Dame's been able to do it. And frankly, the only reason why Notre Dame didn't join a conference in the first place was because nobody wanted them. That was the original problem.
Yeah.
They wanted to join the Big Ten. The Big Ten wouldn't let them. So, and whatever. With all this kind of stuff too, people saying, well, Notre Dame, if they want to, this is the dumbest USC fan argument of all time. If they want to continue the series, they should join the Big Ten. It's like, no, they don't have to. They really don't have to. And if they want to later on, they can. They can, and they will, or whatever. And if it has to come to that, which, I mean, maybe that can transition to the next thing about like the Big Ten and the automatic qualifiers.
Yeah.
But like, that's just something, if it's going towards that way, they'll do it.
Yeah. Real quick, let's throw up the game. Cover, just because it's topical. Jeremiyah Love's right in the center. Marcus Freeman is over his right shoulder. I think there was some speculation about this earlier about where Marcus Freeman was, and his, there was a photo posted months ago about, kind of this cover and who's going to be where. Marcus Freeman is very prominently featured. Tim Tebow, Reggie Bush. I kind of get those guys. Denard Robinson is on the cover. I don't understand that one. The one is kind of weird to me. Like why that's so random. But yeah, just did you ever play this game? Have you ever played one?
Oh, I mean, I haven't played like since
the reboot. Have you played it? The reboot.
I haven't played since the reboot because I don't have the system. I'm not spending like whatever to get it, and I don't have the time to do it these days. But I mean, first of all, I mean, I love it, and I would totally, if I was younger and doing it, I'd play it all the time.
For sure, yeah.
It is quite hilarious though to say like where USC is at. That's like the most prominent is Reggie Bush, because it's like they're not going to put Lincoln Riley on the cover. because it could age just very horribly. So, and I mean, and it also says too, like they got to put Reggie Bush in the cover, who obviously is an all-time great college football player. Tebow, an all-time great as well, but at least with Tebow, there's like, well, DJ Lagway's over his shoulder, and you're like, DJ Lagway's can be pretty good.
Yeah,
he's pretty good.
And Tebow, like, he won a Heisman, he won national titles.
Yeah, for sure. He's deserving to be on there and all that kind of stuff. But it's not like Reggie Bush. There's like someone next to him because who's the guy for USC?
Should have put. I can't believe Chad didn't.
Chad Bowden.
What was I going to say about this? No, Dion. I assume they didn't get permission. He said no.
He probably said no. He probably said like, give me this amount of money. That's what he probably said, and they were like, no, because this is what we're paying these guys to use their thing, and he's probably said no. He that's what's probably happened.
Yeah. Josh Miller, good point. Ex-cover athletes. I do remember Denard Robinson was on the cover of one of these. And so Tebow and Bush, that makes sense to me as well. That's a good shout. Josh Miller, good context from you. That's what we like coming in from the chat. All right, Jamie, let's talk about straight seeding for the playoffs in 2025. So the last year, it was the top 4 seeds went to the conference champions, right? The high in order of their rank. So, number 1 was Oregon, then Georgia, then it was, I believe, Boise State, and then 4th was it Clemson? Who was 4th? Why am I forgetting this?
Arizona State.
Arizona State was 4th. That's right. And so they didn't like that last year. They did not like Boise and Arizona State getting byes. So now it's just straight seeding or straight ranking. 1 through 4 gets the byes. 5 on 5 to 12. They just rank them in terms of the college football playoff ranking. Do you like this change? And now that Notre Dame can get a bye, there was some talk about, getting the bye was actually worse because the bye teams didn't do very well. How do you kind of come out on that? And, so how do you feel about the straight seeding? How do you feel about the possibility of Notre Dame getting a bye now?
I mean, I do see that kind of the downside of it, because that home game was such a cool experience for all the fans. And obviously, like, I was there covering it. It was like just an incredible atmosphere there, and just kind of leading up to it. The fact that was like the first playoff game, first
Ever.
First home playoff game. That was it was a very cool experience to have that. And certainly, like, I think there was a lot of good with that. Well, on the other hand, Riley Mills, you pointed it out on Twitter, Riley Mills, he was gone after that. He tore his ACL in that game. So if they don't play that game, he's obviously healthy and playing in the next game. Not that it would have mattered, by the way, because Notre Dame was 5th in the thing. But I'm just saying, hypothetically, if they had a bye, right?
Right.
So Howard Cross, he was not all the way back yet, and he had to just keep playing on a bad ankle. Maybe an extra week and a half, really, what it was, right? Like maybe an extra week and a half, and he's a much better player.
I mean, Jeremiyah Love was also carrying something.
Jeremiyah Love, KVA, there were key players that they would have benefited from it, I think. Also, just having that one extra game, we talk about like wear and tear, like those corners, just like all of that with Christian Gray and Leonard Moore. Those guys just like barely having to step off the field, like really never leaving the field, right? And so I do think that that part of it is more valuable. And like, let's be honest, the reason that those teams lost, like is because the top 4 seeds, well, 3 of them or 2 of them were not deserving of those, like Boise, and they were underdogs.
Yeah.
Boise and Arizona State were underdogs in the game, and they competed, but they lost the game. They weren't supposed to win those games, and it really wasn't, and it ultimately wasn't that close. Like, it wasn't like that close in the end. And you would say Oregon was undefeated. They were very flawed.
Were any of them upsets? I don't know that Georgia was. I can't remember the Georgia line against Notre Dame. I feel like it was maybe a pick'em by the game time. But
Georgia was like a very slight favorite.
Yeah. So like it's not like they were big upsets, right? It's not like it was like, one team was like an 8.5 point favorite and they lost because they were rusty, right? Like
and the way the game went, it was just one of those. It was like turnovers and special teams were like the difference in the game, and smart coaching and all that kind of stuff. Like, that was really kind of the difference in the game, right? So I mean, Arizona State did not have.
So the thing is like, so that game actually like Texas had that game in control, and then they fell apart late.
Yeah.
So like to me, like that was that turned out to be a great college football game, but like Texas had severely outplayed them to that point.
Yeah.
And it just like, then Scattaboo started doing, crazy.
They made it a game in the end.
Things. That's cool, but like, what I'm saying is like Texas was actively blowing the game.
Yes.
They were choking on applesauce, to quote our Chris Valenti, our favorite rant of all time. But like, Boise State, obviously, like they were outclassed by Penn State. Georgia, Notre Dame was supposed to be close. I mean, was after Ohio State's first game, like what was that line against Oregon?
I don't even know, but I wouldn't have been surprised if I think Ohio State was probably a favorite in that game, like probably a slight favorite in that game. Well, one, they played already before, and it was like a 1-point loss, and it was on the road. And basically that was the only reason that Ohio State wasn't there. So that was, if you want to even call it a toss-up game, like that would be probably generous, but it wasn't like if Oregon's, one of the things is that why I think those teams lost is because if it went the way it was, so what would have happened
Ohio State was favored.
Well, Oregon would have had the 1 seed, Georgia the 2 seed, Texas the 3, Penn State the 4. If Notre Dame, assume they beat Arizona State at home, we can be confident they would have beat Arizona State at home. But Penn State and Notre Dame play in that game after. Well, guess what? We already saw that game. And Ohio State would have played Texas, who would have had because they would have been 3 versus 6, right?
Yeah.
Well, Ohio State, we saw Ohio State beat them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it would have been Tennessee versus Georgia. Georgia already beat them. So, I mean, it's safe to say Georgia would have won that game instead of losing their game. Oregon would have played the winner of Indiana, Boise State. They're winning that game. Well, first of all, they already beat Boise State, but they're winning that game, right? Like, so that's how it kind of it changes. But anyways, when you get into that top 8 anyways, those all should be games that anyone should win. That's just how it is. I think it's just something was made. It was too much was made from that, because it's like you're talking about 1 year. It's just an extremely small sample size to say like, well, the buys really hurt them. Like, no, I think it was just more about the matchups and the teams.
Yeah. So, to me, you always want to play less games. Like you don't want to have to play, more games to have to win the thing, just because of what we've been talking about. Like, there's just things that can happen in an extra game, no matter who it's against. People get hurt in random games, and you don't want to have to do that, right? There's just a wear and tear factor to all of this. So, now they are discussing they're meeting now to discuss what's going to happen in 2026. Obviously, they had 12. They want to go to 16 now. And the SEC and the Big Ten, the SEC, they want to propose basically a 4-4-2-2-1 format where there are automatic bids for 4 Big Ten, 4 SEC, 2 Big 12, 2 ACC, and 1 group of five team, and then 3 at large, which is where Notre Dame would fall into. And I'm sure Notre Dame at that point would have like a guaranteed, like you're in the top 12 or in the top 16 or whatever it is. Like if they are in that, then they are guaranteed to make it kind of deal. There's a lot of whining going on about schedules and strength. It is the most participation trophy argument that you can make, right? We should make it because our schedule was difficult, regardless of how those games actually happened. Like Kalen DeBoer had a comment today about, I wonder how many of these teams, what their record would be if they played our schedule. And it's like, well, if it was 9-3 or worse, then they would have missed the playoffs just like you did, because, you lost on the road to Oklahoma by 21 points, 5-16. For some reason that gets lost in this. It's like these teams have agency. They could have just won the game, Jamie. That's another thing that could have happened. They could have just beaten Oklahoma and they would have been in the playoff like they wanted. So, I mean, it's just like Indiana, right? Whatever cupcake teams that they say they had to play, well, they didn't lose to any of them. I'm sure there are a lot of those teams that were very similar to Oklahoma. They had to win those games on the road. They didn't lose to them, and that's why they got to go. And that's why Alabama missed. So, I mean, they beat the Vandies. They beat the Oklahomas or that caliber of opponent. So they got to go to the playoff. I mean, that's the way it works. I don't know why that's confusing to anybody. But, Jamie, 4-4-2-2-1, what say you?
I think it's dumb, but not for the reasons that for a lot of people think it's dumb in terms of like the SEC and the Big Ten getting the 4 auto bids. Frankly, those conferences are better. They just are. In general, like it's a deeper league. They have better teams. They have more resources put into these teams than these other teams. I don't think it's like, I think it's stupid that they want to just argue for the 4 qualifiers. They should just argue for the 16 best teams to get in. Because, as it stood last year, it would have been from the big Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Indiana. I mean, they already got 4 in, right? And no one else in the top 16. Well, no one else deserved it. If you look at it, right? Like Illinois was 20th. There wasn't another team that deserved it. And on another year, it might be different, right? Maybe like Michigan's good, or, Washington's good, or whoever, right, is good. And that's fine. But so 4 for the big there: Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina. That's a lot from the SEC. Wouldn't you want just that? Isn't that good enough? Like, aren't you kind of? I guess they're probably going to say like the SEC is probably going to would get one of the wild cards anyway.
At larges,
yeah, right. So that's fine, but like, why does? I mean, it seems like pretty simple that like the Big Ten, it'll kind of work itself out in terms of like, because there's just going to be some years where there's going to be like 5 that deserve to go from the Big Ten, and there's going to be 4 that deserve to go from the SEC or whatever, and then work it out from there. The reason I have the biggest problem with it, first of all, I like the automatic qualifier. I think there always should be an automatic qualifier for a group of 5 team, right? Like, that's good. It's good to have one of those teams in the mix, because if one of those teams can actually do something in that thing, it's a good story. If they lose, so be it. But if a Boise State or Navy or whoever gets into the mix and they get an upset, man, that's great for college football. That's a really good story. Like, that is something I think is a good thing. My problem is actually with the two each for the Big 12 and the ACC. Like, why does the Big 12 deserve two?
Right.
The Big 12 stinks. They suck. I'm sorry. Yeah. We played 9 games against the conference every year. It's like you guys aren't good.
It is such a weird. I don't get it. I don't. Why you're like you said. What does that mean? That wins aren't special because they're in a conference. The team is the team. Go ahead.
Well, so if you should, get points for beating a Sunbelt team and then the record looks better. It's like, no, like you aren't good enough. Like, I'm sorry. Like, as it stands, there would have only been Arizona State would have been the only Big 12 team that was in the top 16 last year, and BYU and Iowa State, 10-2, 10-3 would have been on the outside looking in. I mean, you won 10 games with those 9 things. It's like they just looked at you and they said, you're not good. You're not good enough. Which, fair, because they weren't good enough. Because you lost to Arizona State, which wasn't good enough. It'd be different if they were scheduling some of these teams and you're like, man, the Big 12 keeps beating, the ACC in these games, or they keep beating the SEC or Big 10 in these non-conference games. That wasn't happening. That's not something that was happening. So I really don't know why, they would deserve to have, even if you said, okay, well, Iowa State, you get into, okay. Then it's going to, like, who's that bumping out then? It's going to bump out a better team. It's going to bump out a better team. Like, it's going to bump out some SEC team that is actually could wipe the floor. Forget about these bowl games where there's all opt-outs. Like, if you said, hey, Ole Miss versus Iowa State, who's anyone taking in that game? They're taking Ole Miss. They're taking them in that game. Yeah. So I just don't really see why. And then, with the ACC, obviously there was it was Miami, Clemson, and SMU would have made it based on the 16. And let's face it, I don't think that maybe Clemson only got that 16th. They wouldn't have been put there, but they won the ACC. They won the ACC championship. So I don't think it's a bad thing that they're there. And I don't think any of those Big 12 teams, I don't think there's anything there that says wow, they should have been ranked higher than SMU or something like that. Right. I just don't think there's enough evidence to show that. So the whole idea too, this Texas Tech paying, the billionaire paying to get all these guys because they want to make the playoff or whatever. It's what, Texas Tech, maybe they do win the Big 12 this year because, it's one of those conferences that's always going to be wide open. Maybe they do, right? Their defense was just atrocious last year, though, too. So, I know they bought a lot of guys, but it's is it really going to go? Are they going to go from 120th defense to 40th? And guess what? If you're 40th on defense and you get in the playoff, you're getting smoked. In the first round, you just are, because the teams you're playing are just so much better. You're playing against 2 teams that are in the top 10 on offense, top 10 on defense, and you're playing that. And that's just kind of it is a different game. You're playing. There's a reason why and I don't want to be the whole thing where it's what's his face, the guy who's the Jim Nagy, who's the the GM of he was ran the Senior Bowl. He's now the GM of Oklahoma, and
he's just like he's just saying like, oh, look at all the rosters.
They should pick it based on NFL. Like, no, they shouldn't. You got to go out and
you do have to play.
You do have to play.
Yeah,
but there was nothing on the field that said that, you do know that there is more NFL talent against these teams, and people have eyes and can see like, oh, they have more dudes than these Big 12 teams have dudes. They're better than them. So it shouldn't be just picked on that. You got to win games, because there's obviously like Florida has more NFL dudes than whatever. It's like, well, they didn't earn it. That just because of that, they shouldn't do it. But, if you're Ole Miss and you're 14th or whatever they finished ranked, like they should be above a 10-3, a 9-3 Ole Miss should be above a 10-2 BYU. They're better than them. And that's the whole point of having the committee. And I don't even think the committee, that's why the whole thing of like strength of schedule or whatever, it's just because Alabama got left out. That's stupid. Like, that's dumb. And that is that whole thing from Sankey is just stupid. But
yeah, because they lost.
They lost. And all you got to do is just win those games and then you're in.
Yeah. They didn't, that's the thing. Like, their strength of schedule, whatever it was, it didn't cost them. That's not what cost them. They lost to the bad teams. That's what cost them. So the argument that they're making, you lost to the types of teams that the other teams were beating. You shouldn't have done that. That part doesn't, like, it's a nonsensical. It's like, to me, it's a non sequitur. Are you concerned that if they went straight 1 through 16, like just the top 16 make it, right? Are you like, does the automatic qualifiers for the conferences, and you've kind of already said it's fine for the Big and the SEC, but like the automatic qualifiers, does that make it easier for Notre Dame to maintain its independence? Because then those conferences, those teams don't feel punished for losing. So like, if it's straight ranking, losing to Notre Dame could hurt your ranking, but it doesn't hurt your conference standing. So this was like a whole thing with USC for the longest time, where it's like they would lose to Notre Dame, but it's like, but the Pac-12 South, like they're still on in the Pac-12 South, And I heard this my whole life. I've been hearing this. Yeah. So it's like, does that incentivize teams then? It's like, hey, your conference standing is all that matters. So therefore, these games against Notre Dame, they matter to Notre Dame, but they don't matter to us in the sense that it costs us ranking, which is what matters. It's the actual conference standings that matter.
Yeah, I guess that is that's, I guess, USC's argument too of why they're,
right.
Hey, let's wait till there's the 4 things. It's like, come on, you're playing for 4th in the Big Ten. USC, this is what it's come down to.
And the other conferences have already scheduled Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Like these other teams, these big time teams, like they've already without the clarity, I'm just saying, like, it could be it could be a unintended consequence going forward. Like, when I say going forward, I mean into 2030, whatever.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't have been shocked if like Alabama said, well, we're going to drop this game now because whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been cowardly for sure, but there's less meaning to that game. So you just have to plug somebody else in. What do you do?
Yeah.
Right. But, I don't know. I guess it does give them the security of it, but I just look at it. I'm not going to go through the top 16 every year, but how many years do they have? Those conferences have, because that would be 8 of the top 16. How many years do they have 10 of the top 16? Probably a lot. Like in the last 10 years, probably a lot, so I don't know why, I just don't understand the kind of hey, we need this security, because it's you're gonna make it. It's just also too, they still give, even if you look at the rankings before those teams lost, like Ole Miss lost their third game and Alabama lost their third game, they were ranked higher than all these other teams. They were ranked higher than, they were a 2-loss team that was higher than Indiana, a 1-loss team. That was happening. So just win enough. And it'd be obviously different if you're wow, Alabama got left out because they lost a double overtime game to Georgia, but they took care of business everywhere else. That is a totally different thing. You lost to 2 teams that barely made bowl games.
They made bowl games because they beat you.
Yeah.
That's why Oklahoma made a bowl game.
Well, and they even they hadn't lost to Vandy in 40-something years.
Yeah.
It's well, win the game like you have the last 40 years and you're in. I don't know. I just think a lot of it is just really stupid, and it's them trying to exert their influence and their power and to say hey, you guys got to do what we're doing. But I honestly think that they should just say, hey, let's just let it play out and do it, because I saw, I can't remember if it was Chris Vanini or it might have been him from the Athletic, or if it was somebody else who posted on average how many years they were in the top 16. And it was the average number of teams top 16 for SEC was 5.3. And it was 5.8 or 5.2 for the Big Ten. So it's you're fine. I don't think anyone, I just don't see it getting to a point where you're going to get someone is really going to, there's always going to be a thing where someone gets left out, if there's a bubble team or whatever. Yeah, people are going to complain. Okay. But this wasn't the time to complain about that.
Yeah.
And when it goes to 16, they're all in. Those teams that you complained about are in. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Everyone's concerned about getting left out. But look, man, you got agency. You got agency to make the best decision for yourself and to do the thing that you got to do to make sure that you're set up as well as you can. And that's true of college football, and it's true of your media company as well, Jamie. You can go to VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame Football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides a professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Jeremiyah Love on the cover of EA College Football 26. There was a question on our board about, kind of him, Reggie Bush. They share the cover together, Jamie. Him, Reggie Bush, and Rocket. Matt, in his way, put up the stats for Reggie Bush and Jeremiyah Love and Rocket. Now, first of all,
the Rocket stats are always going to look bad comparatively to these teams. It's just a different era. So it's you can't even compare.
His name was Rocket. That's that they called him by his nickname, Jamie. To me, if you go by the nickname that you got when you were Rocket, no one even knows his first name. To me, that adds like 50% to the stats. Like that Rocket, like he would literally touch the ball like 4 or 5 times a game. It was just like you said, it was a different time. They barely threw the ball. I'm actually kind of surprised that he went on to be as good a receiver in the NFL, just because he nothing they did at Notre Dame was very sophisticated.
They didn't really develop him.
Yeah, like that was not a thing. Like I've watched, trust me, I've watched during COVID, I watched every old game that is online anywhere. These routes are not, they're not it. I am curious though, like what do you think is like Jeremiyah Love's like ceiling? Like they get the absolute most out of Jeremiyah Love in 2025. What is his, like, I don't want to say realistic. Don't go crazy, right? But like what could he do in terms of yards? What could he do in terms of catches? Like what could that look like in your mind? Right? Because he's on the cover, and I'm like, I don't gamble, so it's whatever. To me, there's no greater value in a Jeremiyah Love Heisman kind of wager right now, because if he blows up in the first 2 weeks, his numbers are going to go way down. You'll never get more value out of him than you do right now. So like, to me, what is his like pie in the sky potential in 2025?
I mean, just in terms of numbers, like his numbers are never going to be like quite what like.
Do you think he could average? Do you think he could average 8 yards a carry over an entire season?
Yeah. I think that's on the table for sure.
Okay, so could he get 160 carries next year?
I think he could. He got 163 this year. So
okay, so
yes.
do you think he could get 200?
Yeah, he could. I just think that. So I think 1,600 yards rushing.
Yeah,
for sure, it's on the table.
Yeah,
300 to 400 receiving is on the table too. So could he get like 1,900 yards, all-purpose yards, or 2,000? Yeah, I think that's like the absolute like ceiling, because that he would have to get so much more use than he had. So here's a perfect example. Bijan Robinson. God, Bijan, what a friggin' college football player. What a player still. 1,894 yards, all purpose. He was, first of all, Jeremiyah Love, 7.1 yards per play. That's just total with those ones. Bijan, 6.8. He had 277, like touches basically, and 192 for Love. So could Love get, 250 to 270? That's a lot. 277. That's a lot.
I bet you he doesn't even want that.
I don't think he'll get that.
Yeah.
So in order for that to happen, he'll just have to. I don't think it's really hard. Like, it's just those guys, the backs that get like, so Ashton Jaunty last year, he's everything. Like, yes, he was so good, but they basically force fed him trying to win him a Heisman. Like, part of their goal of the season was not just like, hey, let's win and do this. Because if they were really thinking long term, they would have said, hey, let's back off on some of this a little bit and, get them a little fresher. And also, how about these freshmen who have 10 carries and we start working these guys in a little bit more? Because that's why they have backs that have barely touched the football now. And that ends up hurting them and then hurting the team really overall. And I just don't think that Notre Dame's going to do that with Love. Do I think you'll see some of what they did with, Audric Estime, where he had end of games, and there was plenty of times where Notre Dame fans were like, "Why is he still in the game?" They're trying to get him a Doak Walker Award.
Yeah.
Which cool. Like that was great. And somehow he was like not even a semifinalist or whatever. It was something so stupid that I can't even believe that he wasn't a finalist. But I think there might be some of that, but there's also going to be like they're not going to push it if Love is hurt. Like if he's like kind of banged up like he was at the end of the season, and that's like middle of the season, and they're playing games where they're like, yeah, we're going to be okay with Price and Aeneas Williams and Kedron, you know, then they're not going to push it because they don't have to, right? So, yeah, absolute ceiling, I think would be like 1,800 something yards all purpose, which would obviously, he'd probably be a Heisman finalist if that happens. Probably more realistic. I mean, he had 1362 all purpose last year. Probably more realistic. I would say I could see that jumping to like 1,600. Because you got to remember there's going to be a lot of games that are just going to be blowouts.
Yeah.
That, I mean, there's no reason to think that they're not going to have similar type of, success with running the ball there too. And then what about if there's games where Price is just going off? You're not going to give him the ball. Like, I think they'll feed him, like it would be totally different. And I think one of the things with Audric too was that he got a little bit more run because if Diggs had stayed that year, he would have got a little bit less.
Yeah.
But Diggs left. So that meant there was a little bit, not a lot of experience behind him. That all plays a part in it. So I don't know, but ultimately it doesn't matter in terms of, how much he gets and whatever. Could he be drafted the same kind of areas that like a Reggie Bush, a Bijan Robinson, Jaunty, Jahmyr Gibbs, these guys who went like super high, like,
for sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I was just looking at Reggie Bush's stats at USC. So in 2005, his Heisman year, he had 237. 237 total touches. 200 rushing. But it's funny too, because like that team had Lindell White, so it wasn't like they were, just all kind of, it's all like they were Reggie Bush all the time. It just feels like so many touches. 8.7 yards a carry for Bush in 2005. That's probably why he won the Heisman. It'll be interesting. Yeah, I just always kind of wonder about it. It's not something that I need to happen. It's just I just feel like there's potential for him in a way that there hasn't been for a Notre Dame offensive player in a very long time. And so I'm just kind of curious, like what you kind of thought about where that could go and what kind of season it could be. I don't know how the receiving piece is going to work out either. Like it's one of those things like I could see how they would do it, but it's like, is that actually going to happen? I kind of have my doubts about that. But we'll see, right? You never know how they're going to incorporate him. I think that's a good place to end it. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say Kyron, because I think Kyron is the guy to kind of look at.
In terms of receiving?
It just in terms of usage, right? Like in what he had. And he obviously was by far the main guy, in his two main years.
Yeah.
So 246 and 262. touches, right, in both those years. Well, I mean, but he also returned punts in his.
Got you. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, but 246 plays in the 2020 season. Obviously, that's only 12 games.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. The games can whatever. But do I think he's going to get? And it was 5.8 yards played. That's obviously less than the 7 point, quite a bit less than the 7.1. I just don't know if I don't think he's going to get that same kind of usage. I think it's really hard to get that kind of usage. They didn't have the depth. They didn't blow teams out as much. They didn't. There's just a lot of different factors that played into it.
Yeah. Either way, should be a heck of a season for Jeremiyah Love in 2025. We can end it there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you like what you heard, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So whatever it is, we are going live. We'll be back on Thursday with more Notre Dame football talk. Maybe we'll do a mailbag. I think Thursday is a good time for a mailbag show, Jamie. We'll plan for that. So if you have a question, head over to irsportsdaily.com. It's going to be posted on the message board. You can put in your question. We'll answer it on Thursday. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.